Hello and welcome to Louise Singleton Creations and the second weekend of the Moulds and Shapes collaboration. Last week's collaboration saw 8 YouTube artists using 8 new Druzy moulds from Moulds and Shapes, and we're doing exactly the same thing this weekend but with a different Druzy mould. Today is the last day of the second weekend of collaborations, so you may have already seen a lot of the videos, but after mine there are still 2 more to watch, so please check the video description for the link to the playlist. With all that said, sit back and enjoy the video. So here is my stunning Druzy trinket dish mould from Moulds and Shapes. Isn't that just lush? I love it. For my trinket dish this week, I'm using paper, and before I can cut my paper, I need a template. So I took a piece of acetate and I'm roughly drawing the shape of the central part of the mould onto the acetate. It doesn't need to be perfect, just as long as it's slightly bigger than that central oval, and then I will cut it out and I'll be able to use it to size my paper properly. Next, I had to choose my paper, and I've got quite a big collection of papers from Charmed Cards and Crafts. They have such a great selection, and in the end I went for the one with the houses on. I like the kind of steampunk vibe I'm getting from this one. If these particular papers are still available, I will put a link in the video description. So today I'm going for a 3D effect, and for that I needed to have 2 sheets exactly the same. I decided on the area that I wanted to use and then drew around the template on the first sheet, and then I just cut it out. Once that was cut out, I took what was left of the paper and laid it over the other sheet so that I could draw around the missing oval, if that makes sense. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, why didn't I put both sheets of paper together and cut both the identical ovals out at the same time? Well, because, I didn't. I didn't think of that until just this moment. Anyway, I ended up with 2 identical ovals. Now, I want one of those ovals to stay as a full oval as the background, but on the second one, I wanted to cut all around the edge of the houses because they're going to be in the foreground. And as if by magic, here are both the pieces, and as I hold them together, you'll get a kind of an idea of what I'm going for to see that depth. Do you see? It already looks quite cool, doesn't it? So I want that, and I want it immersed in resin. So before I can immerse that in resin, I need to laminate it. Your other option, if you don't want to laminate it, is to use spray varnish on both sides of the paper and give it a few coats of spray varnish. It needs to be completely sealed because the resin will darken the paper if it soaks in. That's why I chose to laminate it. It just gave a better overall effect. So when you've spent half an hour opening up the laminating sheet, pop your paper inside and pop it through the laminator. You can usually pick laminators up very cheaply. You don't need anything fancy, but they really do come in handy. So this is sped up. The process is quite a bit slower than this, but you don't need to sit there for 5 minutes watching things go through a laminator, do you? Anyway, once they're both through, it's time to cut them out. And it seems like I didn't actually film the cutting process, which was probably a good thing. But one thing I must mention is when you're cutting out anything that's been laminated, leave around 2 or 3 millimeters around the edge of the image, because otherwise you're going to end up with resin seeping in between the 2 layers of laminate. So before I could add these laminated images to the resin, they needed to be joined together and they needed a gap between them so that you would get the 3D effect. If there was no gap between them, you just wouldn't be able to, it would be a waste of time doing all of this. You may as well just use one sheet of paper. So I'm using sticky backed foam pads. It was a bit of an ordeal, really, because I put all of those on, then peeled all the paper off, and then stuck another load on because I wanted to double up the height of the layer. So yeah, that did take a little while, but it was worth it in the end. Once I'd removed the paper backing from my double layer of foam pads, it was time to attach the two pieces together. Do excuse my head. Sometimes it's unavoidable. It will just have to be under the camera so I can see what I'm doing every now and again. So there we have it. Doesn't that look good? I was already quite excited about how this was going to look. So now I need to prepare my mould for the next step. I decided to brush mica powder onto the Druzy part of my mould, and because I was going for a kind of steampunk vibe, I didn't want to go for anything too glamorous. I wanted to keep it quite dark, and so I chose like a dark silvery grey to brush over the Druzy area of the mould. So some of you might be surprised to know that even though I started this channel based on resin art, and I've been doing resin art for about 6 years now, I mostly focus on casting and trying out lots of different ideas, and I don't spend an awful lot of time doing special resin effects. And when I do it, very often they turn out really rubbish and I just don't have the flair for it. But, sometimes that can make you a bit scared of doing resin art because you think, oh, well, it's not going to work. Well, you know what? If you don't enjoy doing all the wonderful effects, don't do those effects. Do something else like I'm doing now. You can still make beautiful resin art without doing all the different blooms and I don't even know the names of all the things, which are absolutely stunning, but I don't have a very good track record with them. And in this collaboration, I am joined by 7 other resin artists that really are skilled when it comes to all the different wonderful effects. So you really have got a treat if you go to watch their videos. And before you tell me off for putting myself down, I'm not putting myself down. I know I do have my strengths and my own skills. My skills lie more in innovations and inventions and trying out brand new things and coming up with really cool ideas. So yeah, there you go. I'm not putting myself down. I'm not very good at some of those complicated techniques. So anyway, what I was trying to say before I started waffling was this idea of adding paper to your resin art means you can make something absolutely stunning without having to do all the different techniques that I was just complaining about. With all my dark silver dusting done, I took a damp microfiber cloth and cleaned the centre of the mould. Next, I mixed up enough epoxy resin to fill the mould, and I'm really sorry, I can't remember what the amount was now. And yeah, the other thing I need to mention is I'd actually, for the first time in a long time, I'd run out of regular epoxy resin and I only had fast cure resin left, which really wasn't ideal because it's harder to degas if you're pouring it deep. So I knew there was a chance I was going to get some bubbles in this. So yeah, if you're going to have a go at completely filling one of these moulds all in one go, use regular epoxy resin, not fast cure. Once it was all cleaned up, I started pouring in my epoxy resin. I didn't completely fill it. I would say I used about half of the resin. I needed to make sure that there was a layer covering the centre of the mould, but I didn't want to completely fill it. And then it was time to add my double layered laminated image, and I was a little bit nervous about it. And the reason I was nervous was because I needed the resin to be able to flow between those two layers. Otherwise, there would be a massive cavity of air trapped between the two layers, and I would end up with huge bubbles on the surface of my trinket tray. And that's what was making me quite nervous. So I did manipulate it quite a lot. I did a little bit of sliding around with it. I did some pressing and some squeezing and a little bit of lifting up, just manipulating it in every way that I could, just to try and make sure there were no huge pockets of air trapped in there. And when I'd finished faffing around with it, I filled it up with the remaining resin and waited for it to cure. And I've got to say, I was a little bit nervous. So now it's time for the demolding, and let's listen to the wonderful sound of demolding the Druzy. I hope you're as excited as I was. Here we go. Oh my word. Isn't that amazing? I shouldn't say that about my own stuff, should I? But wow. I was very pleased with it. Yeah, there's some big bubbles in there, but it's not half as bad as it could have been. And I think they actually add to the whole look of it. Although I am going to try and do something about that in just a moment. But yeah, overall, I'm very happy with it at that stage. What do you think? Gorgeous, eh? So on closer inspection, I found this bubble, which was a surface one, which actually was a hole going right down to the laminate, and I wasn't happy about that. I wanted to fill it. So I thought while I was at it, I might as well fill the other bubbles as well, because there were some quite large ones. That one's quite large there. And yeah, I thought I'd have a go at it. I've got a really fine drill from Let's Resin. So I decided to drill into each of the holes and try to fill them with resin. And I was a bit concerned using the drill at first because I thought it might go down to where the laminate was and go through the laminate, but actually it didn't happen like that. As soon as you've got down to the bubble, you can feel it with the drill. You can feel it kind of go into the void, and you know as soon as you've hit the spot. So you don't get down as far as the laminate. It just gets, as soon as it hits the air in the air bubble, you know, and you stop. You just feel it. Oh, I do waffle, don't I? Anyway, once I'd done that with all of the bubbles, I mixed up some resin and tried to fill those voids with the resin and a micro brush. And when I'd finished doing that, I poured in the rest of my resin to completely cover the inner surface of the trinket tray. And you can probably already see that it didn't eliminate the appearance of the bubbles, but it definitely did help a little bit. And you know what? Even though this is supposed to be a trinket tray and it would work really well for that, or maybe candles on there or something like that, I actually think it would be really nice mounted on the wall as to look like a framed picture. I think that would work too. I'm very happy with it. So I'd like to know what you think if you let me know in the comments. Next up in the collaboration this evening is Sandra, and then after that it's Petty's Home Art. So you've got more treats to come. The link to the playlist will be in my video description, so you can go there to get sent directly to the next video. If you've enjoyed this video, please do give me a thumbs up and subscribe if you would like to, and I will see you again next time. Thank you for watching, and bye for now.